What's good, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Tox Talk on American Autopsy, man. And we are here with a very special episode. I'm here with my guy, Unapologetic, man. How you doing today, bro?
I'm good. Glad to be here. Excited to be doing an interview again.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Like, honestly, like, just to kick it off, like, you have really been like capturing my attention lately with all that's happening, everything from Israel and Palestine and Ukraine, Russia, BRICS, all this craziness happening. One of the stories I think that has definitely like been getting lost in the fray is the whole situation with this UFO stuff. And honestly, not even just getting lost in the fray, but more often than not mocked still, which is crazy to me with the plethora. But I'm gonna let you go ahead and get into that, man. Like just briefly, like I would say, like just walk us through like a timeline of events, with everything going on, and kind of like what piqued your interest and got you saying, yo, this is like a big story right now, y'all.
All right, that's a good question. I'll get into it. So at first, like most people, like when I was younger, I did like have an interest in the topic. I would like watch YouTube videos and um, I would like watch like ancient aliens and like stuff on the documentaries on the History Channel and stuff like that. I thought it was interesting, but like years and years ago, I just kind of left it alone because like most people, I felt like, all right, now what am I supposed to do with this information? It was like so hard to verify it.
Exactly.
The topic wasn't really moving anyway, it wasn't progressing. So I just felt like, what else can I do with it? So last year, I kind of picked it up when David Grush did that interview in the debrief article, and then he did that on the same, like around the same time, did the TV interview on News Nation with Ross Coulthart.
Mhm.
And he basically went into how he's been doing an investigation over the last, I believe it was like 3 to 4 years, and he managed to get in contact with over 40 people who he says are inside of this secret UFO program, and he has conducted this whole investigation, collected interviews, documents, photographs, videos. He said he had the locations of the bases where they're keeping UFOs. And he's brought this information, all of it's classified, but he's brought it to the inspector generals for the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And he's brought it to the Senate. He's brought the witnesses to those offices, and he's testified in a closed door meeting with the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so that was definitely that definitely caught my attention, because now I felt like, all right, this is going somewhere, and there's areas where we can like dig into and like try to verify if this is like real, how real this is, and like what exactly is going on. So I just felt like it opened up a whole door of like whole area of research we can get into, and it's like actively ongoing with like official investigations in the government that you can follow like the document trails and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And like I guess for me, like similar to you, like growing up as a kid, like my YouTube was filled with like Jay-Z Illuminati videos and alien videos and shit. Now I look at the production value of like a lot of these guys. It's not like Billy Carson and the Fifth Kind and all these guys. I'm like, these kids nowadays got like 3G renderings of alien. I'm like, y'all got it good. Back in the day, it was just us watching some boy in his basement talking about like, yo, this thing says that. Like, so these kids got it good now, but like 2017 was really what got me back into it. Cause like for a while, I'm not gonna lie, like I still had this thing like we're not alone out there. But as I got more into like science and physics and all that, like I really got into like questioning, everything that I thought I believed about the situation. And then when I started learning about a lot of the guys from Ancient Aliens, like and how like how they dramatize a lot of the stories that they're telling and everything, it didn't make me fall back, but it was kind of like, all right, maybe I need to start reevaluating my beliefs. But then when the New York Times article came out in 2017, and then all of the footage started coming out, and I think his name is Jeremy Corbell. his stuff and the Bob Lazar interview on Rogan, like it just kept coming and coming. David Fravor as well. That's when I was like, all right, I knew I wasn't tripping. I knew I wasn't tripping all these years. So that's what like kind of got me really back into it. But then, like I said, your channel, when you started talking about like the official, like, all right, now we got whistleblowers involved now, people like David Grush, and then like you see this like full court press to like discredit these guys, not even like going after the words that they're saying, but going after them as like people with their personal lives. Like I remember, I think it was the guy from he was on the Intercept, I believe.
Ken Klippenstein.
Yeah, that motherfucker. Like I already didn't like him from like a while ago when he went after Fiorella like a while ago, just randomly for no reason because she was questioning his journalism. But now it's like you're attacking this guy's, PTSD. He's a soldier that served, and you're not even attacking his claims, you're just attacking him like in his personal life, which okay, that's his personal life, but what do you have to say about what he's actually saying? And this is where I started seeing people like faltering with logic, like not just Ken, but Neil deGrasse Tyson as well was another one. I'm like, Neil deGrasse was like, oh, it's like he's still running around saying that's like fog smoke and shit and like weather balloons and all this. And it's like, bro, like the government is literally saying, yo, this ain't us, this ain't China, this ain't Russia, this ain't any of these other countries. So it's like, how like does it still like infuriate you? Because I see like your live streams and all that, like you constantly bring this up, and this I'm right there with you. Like, what would it take for you guys to not just like actually report on this story honestly, but what evidence would it take for you guys to say, okay, there's something there, there's a there. We can't just keep ignoring this and saying it's weather balloons or swamp gas, or when the whole China balloon thing was going on, people were saying it was these Chinese balloons and shit. But it's like, yo, like David Fravor would know if it was a fucking balloon that he was seeing. That's an experienced pilot.
Right. And you brought up two important topics. One was the smearing of David Grush. It was just a hit job from people literally inside the intelligence community trying to make him look bad. And then the topic of like, okay, so for people who want to, they say they're covering the news, and especially people like in our space covering like anti-imperialism, the national security state, stuff like that. What is it going to take for you? How much evidence is there for you to take this for it to like merit investigation? So let me start with the Ken Klippenstein part first. That was so like when this first came out with David Grush, I didn't just jump right into, okay, let me talk about this on my channel, let me write an article about it. I wanted to, like most people, the stigma that has been built up like around this topic for years, it made me approach it. I would say I was more cautious on this topic than I ever was on any topic I've ever covered. So I spent hours and hours, and then it turned into weeks and months doing research on this topic, so I could make sure that despite what most people would accuse me of, which is just being uncritical and just following propaganda from the national security state, I wanted to make sure that I was following the facts on this. And when the Ken Klippenstein article came out, that was like a big red flag for me, because he admitted in a Twitter space that, and like you said, it wasn't that he was challenging the facts of the story. It wasn't he was challenging any of the claims that he made. It was just a straight personal attack. That was in by itself is sleazy. But if it was just some random person who took it upon themselves to like throw mud at him, that'd be one thing. But he, like he said in his own words on that Twitter space, he was given the leads to follow by people in the intelligence community, his unnamed sources in the intelligence community. So again, they didn't say, hey, here's some evidence that this is bullshit and he's making this up. Or Ken Klippenstein didn't come to that conclusion himself and write an article about that. It was just, hey, here's some shit in this guy's past to make him look bad and to discredit him. And again, not even touch on any of the claims that he made. So from my knowledge of the national security state, when people are making claims that make them uncomfortable and talking about things that they don't want the public to focus on, one of the first things they're going to do is try to discredit them. And they'll do smear campaigns and all those things. They've done it to any number of high-profile people who challenge the national security state. They did
instantly it made me think of the whole Julian Assange sexual assault.
Exactly.
Case. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was definitely something that stood out to me. And that's definitely a point that there's been so much evidence that's come out since like June, July of 2023. But that definitely is, especially being like when I was beginning my research, that definitely stood out to me, because if there's nothing to this, why is there such an effort to attack this person, David Grush, personally? And again, that wasn't even the first time that the intelligence community went after David Grush specifically about his complaint, his official complaint that he brought to the Inspector General. So part of that complaint that he made to the Inspector General, so the main claim was that there are these secret programs that have no oversight from Congress, and they're basically stealing money and stuff like that to fund their program, and doing a bunch of criminality to keep it secret. That was part of the claim. And also there was a complaint of reprisals. So he, while he was doing his investigation, his official investigation, because he was part of this task force that Congress asked to be put together to look into what the executive branch knows about the topic. During his investigation, while he was talking to witnesses, he had his security clearance revoked inexplicably. So he's had a security clearance for over 14 years. He's worked in high-level positions. He worked on the president's daily briefing. He put it together. He was part of the team that put it together and literally walked it to the White House. So this is somebody he's worked for the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, the National Geospatial Agency. So he's somebody who's maintained like top secret clearance, the highest level clearance his entire career, and nobody's ever challenged him on that. But when he's making these claims, again, if there's nothing to it, why is it that the people in the intelligence community are going after him? So part of the complaint was the complaint of reprisals, and the Inspector General found it urgent and credible. And his lawyers challenged whatever, it was some bullshit reason that they even took his security clearance anyway. They said it was something about they couldn't reconcile his hours or something, billable hours that he was working.
Wow.
So it took his security. So it made no sense. His lawyers challenged it. They won the challenge and they brought it to the Inspector General, and they found that urgent and credible. So those are two documented instances.
So just to stop you real quick. So I can kind of make an understanding for people. Is this security clearance? I don't know if you've seen this film. Is this similar to how Oppenheimer and that film was being challenged for his security clearance throughout that entire film? Basically, is that was a similar type of thing that was going on?
I didn't watch the movie, but let me see if I can so I can try to make it simpler. Basically, you need especially the jobs that he was working in, you need a top secret security clearance to get access to the information that he works with. So to strip his security clearance over something like hours, and I'm somebody who's worked hourly jobs and worked just like everybody else in this audience, to act like discrepancies in somebody's hours is enough to prevent them from doing their job entirely, it makes absolutely no sense. So yeah, that's with the security clearance. And so those are two instances of if there's nothing to see here, why is there such a organized effort in the intelligence community to go after this person? And then to your point about the evidence, how much evidence do people need? So this is definitely something that grinds my gears, I would say, because there's such a double standard. It's honestly been driving me nuts over the last year because there's such a double standard over what is considered acceptable evidence when it comes to other stories versus when we're talking about UFOs. And there's this saying that everybody just loves to throw out on this topic, this quote, that extraordinary evidence or extraordinary claim require extraordinary
evidence. Yeah.
What does that even mean? It sounds smart. But what does that mean? So, all right, it's an extraordinary claim to say that doctor, like the NIH, and the national the health apparatus in the government, they were doing research. They were weaponizing a virus, and that virus started a global pandemic. That is an extraordinary claim. What was the extraordinary evidence that anybody needed to prove that? There was no extraordinary evidence. You just needed regular old evidence.
Well, at the time, that was the thing. Like a lot of people. So I remember, a lot of big channels when this claim first started, it was really smaller channels that was first making it. Me personally, I only remember like a very handful of people that were out in front of that claim when it was unpopular. It was like maybe Franco from Frank Analysis, Nico, because I remember they were trash kicking Nico's back in for saying this shit, and like a couple other people. And it was like even like Jimmy's whole his whole channel now is COVID. It was like a while where he just wouldn't talk about it at all. So it's like, when people like say this about now with your reporting on this whole UFO thing, I just find it so crazy now because it's like, all right, so there was a time where, yes, COVID was unpopular. Now we have all this mountain of evidence that has piled up, and we understand, essentially that is what happened, what you said. But with the UFO stuff, this isn't like, for me, it's not even just the recent information. This goes all the way back to like the post World War II era, like the whole I think it's called the Majestic Seven and all that shit, where they put together all of these like people within the Pentagon to monitor. It was like I think it was called Project ATIP that they oversaw. It was like the first like UFO reporting thing that they had. So like it's mountains and mountains of evidence, and then now the most recent concrete evidence that we're getting, and it's like people are just like oh well, but like now that we kind of just religiously accept the whole COVID narrative about it being weaponized and everything, which we now know is basically true. It's almost like we forgot that previously there wasn't a stream of evidence. But to your point, I think there's more evidence to support what you're saying. Like right now, while it's still unpopular, you have more evidence than the people at the time when the COVID narrative was unpopular was, if that makes sense. I don't know if I
No, that does. It makes perfect sense. And honestly, over the last year, I found such a parallel between the UFO topic and COVID. But like you were saying, it's at the beginning, it was heresy. Nobody was you weren't allowed to go there. You'd be labeled a conspiracy theorist and all that stuff. But eventually, over time, there was, like you said, the evidence just piled up. And it wasn't extraordinary evidence, whatever the fuck that means. It was regular evidence. It was Dr. Fauci's emails where he's very clearly initiating a cover-up on the origins of COVID. It was the documents from EcoHealth Alliance where they were requesting money for a grant to weaponize the COVID virus. It was people finding out about an entire Institute of Virology where they were testing the coronavirus in Wuhan. So all of those things, again, the claim was extraordinary that the government was weaponizing a virus that started a global pandemic. That's an extraordinary claim. I don't see what the extraordinary evidence was. It just was regular evidence that was compiled. And with this the UFO topic, like you're saying, the evidence, the regular evidence that counts as evidence in any other story, government documents, uh, uh, statements from government officials,
Yeah.
paper trails, all those things normally prove a story. And all of those things, government reports, investigations, all those things, um, all those things exist for and go back way to the 1940s.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, like how we got here was like, okay, so how much evidence do you need? Because you, and people love to just throw around like
PSYOP. That's their favorite
it's
word.
a psyop, right? This is all a distraction. It's a psyop, and David Rush is lying, and he doesn't have any evidence, and they are narrowly focused on this specific thing, and there are reasons, legitimate reasons, why he doesn't just publish the classified documents, and everybody glosses over that, and there is a lot of nuance there that we can get into, but so for me, when these claims first came forward, right, the lazy approach would be, and yes, I'm going to accuse damn near everybody in independent media of being lazy on this. The lazy approach would be like, okay, well, where's the evidence? He didn't show me any evidence, so obviously it must be fake. And I'm going to completely ignore the story, despite all the implications and how serious it would be if the story is true. I'm just going to ignore it because as soon as I clicked the link to open the story, he didn't provide me all the classified government documents. So I'm just not going to look any further. Okay, that's a lazy way to do it. Me personally, I understood the nuance because, like I said, I did research into the reasons why he hasn't published all of the evidence that he says he's compiled in his investigation from the 40 people inside the program. And like I said, it's legitimate, and we can get into the nuances of why he hasn't done that. But aside from that, he's not the first person to make these claims about the government. So if you want to see if there's any credibility to the story in general, what I did was, okay, there's no way I'm going to force him to publish what he has and what he's given to the Inspector General. What I can do is try to verify pieces of the story on my own from what's already publicly available. So what are the claims? That UFOs are made from a non-human intelligence, and people have been seeing them flying around all over the world. Okay, what evidence is there?
And just to go off that point right there too, that's another point of contention people use all the time that I think is such bullshit, is that, oh, the UFO thing is so serious, why does it only happen in America? And I'm like, and they'll post these like bullshit maps where it's like, you know, like, oh, look at all the dots, it's only in America, this seems to be only an America thing. Then people point to it as a psyop. But I've read stories all over the fucking world about UFOs and shit like that, like Russia especially. China is another one. So it's like I don't understand this like concept that people think like this is only happening here in the States.
Exactly. One of the most, I would say, credible examples of a crash was the Virginia crash in Brazil. And I could get into that later, but okay. The gist of the story is people were seeing UFOs for a couple days. On this day, people were seeing something flying extremely low across the city, and it was a lot of people lived there. And then people saw it crash. There's a witness in the James Fox documentary Moment of Contact who went in the field and actually saw it crash there. But then the story gets even wilder because there are plenty of people across the town who said that they were live beings that came from the crash and they were running around the town. And so again, this isn't just stories from random people now, because there was a government response that was undeniable while this was happening, at the same exact time people said this crash happened, and not just 2 or 3 people, a bunch of people in this city said this crash happened. The military comes in and they block off entire blocks of the area. And then the story goes into how And then there was different witnesses across the city or in the town who said they'd seen this being, and then the story comes to one of the military police actually grabbed it and brought it to a hospital, and they were doing tests on it in the hospital, and that military police officer, he ended up dying from some bizarre infection that none of the doctors have ever seen before. He was in his 20s, died just days after. They didn't do an autopsy, they just cremated the body. But what they did do was a blood test, and they found like 7% toxins that they've never seen before. That was like his blood was made up of 7% toxins that they've never seen before. So that was one of a very compelling case of a crash retrieval. And then there's people who say that the U.S. government got involved. Air traffic controllers say that the U.S. Air Force, they made an unauthorized landing in the country at the same time. So there's all these different threads you can pull from. And again, this did not happen in the United States.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of evidence.
I was hearing stories about them like collaborate, like them making like unauthorized landings in China because they were collaborating with China on these crash retrieval projects as well. So like that's something that's that especially like, you know, people that are in, you know, anti-imperialists especially, you know, pulling that threat, like, well, you know, seeing how you guys can, you know, collaborate here, if this is truly true, if this is what's going on, you know, so it's like it's something deeper that we can really be getting into, not just into the structure of UFOs, but how these governments actually operate, you know, and coordinate with each other, you know, as opposed to how they portray themselves. Like when we watch football, you know, we're promoted this whole thing of like, oh, these guys hate each other, they're out there just hitting each other. But, you know, behind the scenes, we see them dabbing, oh, what's up, bro? How you doing? Da da da. Like, you know, they don't actually fucking hate each other. So it's like, you know, when you hear stories like that, and, you know, especially when you get into like the bigger questions that we can definitely, like, I wanted to get into that towards the end, but you know, that we need to be asking, you know, I just think it's, you know,
yeah, I definitely want to get into that because there's definitely a larger picture going on here, and this is definitely gets to the root of the national security state, and this is one of the things that attracts me to this story. But in terms of evidence, so just documented evidence. There were the different investigation like Project Grudge and Project Sign and Project Blue Book, all those investigations going back, starting in the 40s, going all the way to like the 80s, where and if you look in the archives, these things are available. I forget exactly which one of the project it might have been like Project Twinkle or something like that, where the Air Force. So during my research, I came across this, and I'm blanking on the exact name of it because there was so many different projects. Like between the start of Project Blue Book and like 1947, there were a lot of different government investigations into the UFO topic. But this one that stands out to me was there were commanders from different military bases, Navy, Air Force, Army. They were the top scientists at national laboratories in the country. They all got together in this top secret meeting, and I think it was at Los Alamos Laboratory. Dr. Teller was part of it. He was a big part of the meeting. He was, at the time, one of the top scientists for the country. He was working on the nuclear program. And this is, like you said, after World War II. So these are very serious people. And like I mentioned before, there were other like commanders and captains from different bases. They were all having an issue where they were seeing UFOs at their bases. They were recording them. There were multiple people seeing them at the same time. It was happening so often. It was like multiple times a week. This was happening. So they put together this whole study. They there were, if you look in the archives, there are, I believe it's the FBI archives. They have, or one of the National Archives. They have like the minutes of the meeting, like actual quotes of them going back and forth trying to figure out what it is, and they basically ruled out anything that can possibly be man-made or like some sort of natural phenomena. They had something La Paz, some doctor who was a professor at who wasn't like an actual doctor, but he was a professor at a university, and he was somebody who's known as the father of research into meteors and them like crashing into the earth and being able to be observed from the earth. He was in the meeting. So you had, again, top military officials, the top scientists working on the top secret programs, and you have this specialist in meteors. They all ruled out, they made their judgment off of their area of expertise. They ruled out meteors or any sort of natural thing like that. Dr. Teller said there's the way that these objects are performing, there is no technology in the US that can do that. And there is no technology from another country capable of doing that. And this is back in the 1940s, 1950s. So it was that was very eye-opening for me to hear them rule out all of the things, the explanations that people trying to make today to rule out UFOs. They ruled it out back in the 40s.
In the 40s, exactly.
So there was that, and then I believe if it wasn't this exact report, or it was another similar one to it, where the government was researching. And by the way, there's the cases that they were using to investigate were cases from credible sightings, like pilots, physicists, doctors, scientists, people who were of high caliber, and they weren't like cranks and fucking wackos or anything like that. It was serious people with serious sightings. Sometimes they have radar readings where it was picked the same time those credible witnesses saw it. It was picked up on like from a military base, the radar, or from air traffic controls. And they were going through all of these cases, and that's how they made their judgment. And then, like I said, it was either this report or another similar one. The Air Force, after they asked for this investigation, they put out an official order to destroy it. So, and there's a copy of the destruction order from the Air Force to destroy the report. So if there's nothing to it, why would you convene such a high level, top secret meeting and report and study, and then have it ordered to be destroyed as soon as it's completed? It makes absolutely no sense. But you have documents like that. You have documents from Project Blue Book going back, like I said, decades. And then recently, over the last couple months, there was a top secret proposal from the Department of Homeland Security that was made public. The name was Kona Blue. And this proposal, basically, Senator Harry Reid, he was saying that Lockheed Martin, he's been told that they have crashed UFO materials for decades, and he's been trying to get access to it. And they, not denying that they have it, they told him to
fuck off.
Yeah. And he was the Senate Majority Leader. So between Lockheed Martin and other military officials, they weren't saying that we don't have it. They were just saying you don't have the classification to
you don't have the authority to force us to show it to you.
So he went to the Department of Homeland Security. And
just to cut you off real quick, was that a similar thing that happened to Chuck Schumer as well? Because I remember his whole thing was very similar to what Harry Reid was trying to do as well, right?
So Chuck Schumer put out this 64-page UFO disclosure bill. He put it in the NDAA, so the Pentagon's funding bill last year, and it was explosive, and it was a bunch of basically admitting that there's evidence of a UFO, the secret UFO program being hidden within the government and within defense contractors, basically the same claims that David Grush was making. So I'm not sure exactly the pushback that Chuck Schumer got, but when Harry Reid was the majority leader, he went to the Department of Homeland Security's the Undersecretary for Science and Technology, and I forget her name, Tara O'Toole, I think her name was. She directed this proposal, and it wasn't like some rando at his desk, like on his lunch break, just type this thing up real quick. It was a whole proposal that at least was going on for 6 months, and there were at least 10 documented meetings from Department of Homeland Security leadership going over this whole proposal and putting it together. And the point of the program, it's called a Special Access Program, which is the highest level of secrecy that a program can have in the Department of Defense or intelligence community. And the entire purpose of the proposal it was like 56 pages. The entire purpose of the proposal was to create a special access program to get access to and to inventory all of the UFOs that they say are already in government possession, and they're being hidden in different areas in storage, and they're being hidden in the labs of defense contractors. That was the entire purpose of this program, and it was incredibly detailed. I did write an article about it. So you had the Kona Blue proposal. So again, this proposal was written and like 2013. So again, if this is all a psyop, if there's nothing to it, why was this proposal drafted in 2019? It took all of this effort, and they specifically say that they have the names of the people in government and in private industry who are part of this program. They investigate, and they have a list of these people. They talk about how they have databases, 11 databases of over 200,000 UFO cases. And they're talking about cases that have multiple witnesses, where there are radar, they picked it up on radar at the same time. And they're talking about all these different sources of information where within the government, where they have UFO information. Like they said, they were going to collect data from the FAA. So like the Federal Aviation Administration, I think it is, where they deal with all of the flight safety for the country, all the commercial flights. They said that FAA has data on UFOs. They said that the NRO has data on UFOs. They said that the NGA has data on UFOs. And all of the places that they were saying in the Kona Blue proposal have UFO data. On my own, with just the internet, I was able to find publicly available data from those different areas of government. So this was an incredibly detailed proposal that was based on real information that is being kept within the government. And then, so that was made in 2013, way before any of these David Grush allegations. So one, what are the coincidences that the Senate Majority Leader and the leadership in the Department of Homeland Security were already making the same allegations in secret? It wasn't like they were trying to trick anybody. They were making these same allegations in secret. And then, so you fast forward 12 years later. So now, also this year, what was made public, there was, I think his name was like Dean Johnson or something like that. He's a researcher. And he noticed that there was a reporter who did the story, and they referenced a memo that was sent from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff is basically, they're the 4-star generals that run each of the different branches of the military. So the Air Force, the Army, the Navy. The 4-star generals that run these different sections of the military together. They're called the Joint Chiefs. So this reporter was referencing this memo from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The memo wasn't publicly available. So I think it's, like I said, Dean Johnson, he put in a FOIA request for the memo. He got the memo. It was made public. I think it was in March this year. In the memo, the Joint Chiefs, they put out, they created official reporting procedures for credible UFO sightings at military bases. And it was very telling because for several reasons. There was a lot of the same language and a lot of the same like statements of facts that were in like the Kona Blue proposal were in the Joint Chiefs of Staff memo that they just sent out to every single commander in every single military base in the world. So again, that points to there's some credibility to the evidence that there's clearly evidence that's being kept from the public on this topic that they're using to create policy. So again, that's another point that there is something there. And it was talking about like health effects, because apparently people who have close encounters to UFOs, sometimes they're
gotten sick.
Yeah, they gotten sick, and it seems like some sort of radiation exposure. That was also mentioned in the Kona Blue proposal, and there was basically the memo from the Joint Chiefs of Staff was it was giving the explanation for creating this policy, and then also it was it created a form, like an official government form that you file when there's a UFO sighting at the bases. And then there were all these different, they defined the terms that they were using, which was important. And then they had like line by line what's supposed to be on each line. So like there's a form in the government for anything. Somebody gets hurt on the base, somebody gets transferred or whatever. There's an official form with line by line what needs to be on there. And there was a part for, like I mentioned, physical effects that people had from close encounters to UFOs. Did they have physical effects? Was it picked up on any number of sensors? Clearly that they've picked it up on before. And again, one of the things that stood out to me was they made a very clear distinction at the beginning of that memo that it wasn't about things that you would normally see flying over bases, because in the military, they already have procedures for like if you see a drone or like a spy drone or a military drone or whatever it is flying over the base, or one of them gets shot down or it crashes or whatever, there are already policies and procedures in place to deal with that. And in the memo that was just sent about UFO reportings, they explicitly say all of the sightings of technology that is understandable, like within human capability, all those things get reported under they keep getting reported on the official way. But this new change is specifically for UFOs and technologies that they see that have abilities that know technology that has been made by humans. If they're displaying these capabilities that no other technology can do,
like for example,
they don't have it, and they know that no other country has it. So that they made that explicit distinction in that memo. So there was no misinterpreting that memo. It wasn't. They're not talking about drones. They're not talking about spy planes or anything like that. They're specifically talking about UFOs doing things that our technology can't do. And by the way, with the same, describing them in the same way that they were being described back in the 40s.
Exactly.
So you have
like they're going underwater, like dropping from like 30,000 feet to like hovering right above the water in like seconds. Like this is shit that's not, like, according to our laws of physics, it's not fucking possible. But here it is doing it. We have it on radar doing it. Now we have footage of it doing it, and people, pilots and personnel with thousands of log hours of flight time or being around aircraft and everything are saying that shit's not normal. Are saying this shit,
right? And that's a good point, because it's not that, like, so people they like, oh, why do you focus so much on what the government is saying about UFOs? Why are you trusting the military? First of all, if you're doing any sort of like reporting or commentary on like national security, you're obviously going to at some point be using sources from the government. So let's get that out of the way first of all. But aside from that, the thing with the military sightings and the data that they have, they are in a unique position to get more information and recorded in a better way than an average person can possibly ever do. So there are plenty of people who have stories of UFO sightings, millions of people around the world. That is a point of reference, but it's hard to come to definitive conclusions based on what one person says. Some people have videos on their phone, which is or videos in general. Okay, it's me in videos. It's harder to go with that, especially now with all the CGI and AI and all that shit. Yeah. So even then, it's just harder for me to come to conclusions based off of those things. But when you talk about government sources, first of all, if it's a sighting from somebody like a pilot, first of all, this pilot has thousands and thousands of hours flying. So they know what's normally in the sky. They know what it's like to see a balloon. They know what it's like to see a bird or whatever it is. So that alone is they have more, I would say, expertise in determining what's flying than an average person. And then when you talk about these sightings at military bases, in general with the military, all people in the military are, more than most people, what they're required to do is to observe what's happening and then record it and put it in reports. So they can give detailed, like, minute by minute breakdowns, I would say, like, in a more clear, concise way than the average person does, because they do it like literally every single day when they're writing reports. Yeah. So that's part of it. And then at military bases, it's usually, then it's not just one person at base. So there's going to be more than one person with them. So you have multiple people seeing at the same time. And then also, which is arguably even a bigger plus than all those other things, is the equipment, the millions and millions, sometimes billions of dollars of specialized equipment that they have in radar.
Yeah, you can't trick that equipment.
Exactly. So military bases are the most heavily surveilled areas in the world. So when you talk about sightings at bases, you have all those other factors that I mentioned, and then you have the equipment that they have available to them to record these things. It's just, for me, it seems like a rational source of information on this specific topic. And again, it's not to say, oh, you just trust everything that the military says. But if you want to just talk about source information, they'd have the best source information of anybody. So it's not like, oh, anytime anybody from the military says anything about UFOs, you better believe them. No, but if there's usually a paper trail and there's usually a lot of recorded data that you can attach to that story, which makes it more credible. So
exactly.
that's how I have like leaned more into for this, like where I'm at in my research right now. I've leaned more into sightings at military bases and things like that. But yeah, so you have that Joint Chiefs of Staff memo, and then you have Chuck Schumer's legislation that got put into the NDAA.
Well, I
And
was
it's
going to
funny.
say, going into that Chuck Schumer situation, to me, it read as if the military was kind of using the private sector, like the corporations and the private sector, to basically create a smokescreen of, well, we know nothing about this. We can't control what Lockheed Martin does, and the government doesn't have the right to basically seize Lockheed Martin's property. Where that's what I believe Schumer's bill was going to do. And then it was like a Republican guy. He was like a air quotes libertarian guy that came along and said, "Oh, this is un-American for us to do this. We can't persecute corporations." Go figure, they're persecute American citizens. So, but we can't persecute American corporations. So, and that's basically how the bill got shot down. So I'm like, they're essentially using this like cloak and dagger, like shell under the cup game, where it's like, oh, the military is collecting it, but oh, it's in Lockheed Martin's facility, so oh well, we can't tell you about it because that's their private property. We can't. So it's like it's kind of like those games they're playing, and then the corporation's basically saying, yeah, government, fuck you, you're not going to tell. It's like, at what point are we, like, especially as leftists, and this is kind of where I was going to lean into next, especially as leftists, this is right in our fucking wheelhouse. The collaboration between government entities and corporations coming together to basically hide, like, in my view, hide groundbreaking technology from the American people that could possibly like reinvent everything that we know about philosophy, religion, physics, like every fucking thing. It's like, at what point do you sit back and say, especially as I see a lot of like, communists even like shitting on this concept where it's like, well, we're talking about the means of production. Let's talk about the fact that they're possibly stifling innovation for whatever fucking reason. Because if they have these UFOs, we're talking about technology that's like we can't even fathom right now. like literally can't fathom. Are they stifling that for the sake of making a buck with the technology we have now? Like, what these are questions, especially us as leftists should be asking, but the leftists, it just has this, head so far up his ass that you can't even ask those questions without them thinking, you're like a kook or some shit like that. So what's your take on that?
So that's a perfect segue. So let me just clarify some points on the Schumer legislation. So they stripped some of it. Like, it was a 64-page bill, and when it passed, it got passed in the Intelligence Committee, and then it got voted on by the entire Senate. It passed there, and then when it went to the House, it was the chair of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of the Intelligence Committee that had it taken out of the bill. And it's so funny too, because so like, again, people keep talking about there's no evidence, but again, you're just not looking. So the conflicts of interest between the person who had the most of the biggest parts of the bill stripped, it's so incredible. So first of all, he, like many people in Congress, takes a bunch of money from the defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all those things. But the coincidence is the district that he represents is the same district that Wright-Patterson Air Base is. And so for people who've done research into this topic, Wright-Patterson Air Base keeps coming up. One of the most the big, like, most known instances where Wright-Patterson Air Base has been involved in the UFO research was the Roswell crash in 1947. So allegedly, after the crash, and there've been after this whole thing's happened, there have been well over a dozen people who were working in the military at the time and were involved, who have signed sworn legal affidavits that the official story is not what happened. There was a cover up, and there was something that crashed. And there was several of them who've specifically said that there was a coordinated trick to show the press the pieces of a weather balloon and say that this is what people were talking about. And while they were doing that, they brought the actual crashed craft to Wright-Patterson Air Base. So again, that congressperson, and that's not the only involvement that they've had in this. Many people keep saying that Wright-Patterson is directly involved. So this representative he's a chair of the Intelligence Committee, and he represents Wright-Patterson Air Base. Inexplicably, is fighting tooth and nail, refusing to let the NDAA pass unless they take those important parts out of Chuck Schumer's legislation. Again, if there's nothing to see here, why is somebody with such a clear conflict of interest going so hard to prevent legislation that would out this entire scandal?
Exactly.
So that's part of it. And then the point that you were making about the corporations and the national security state, and basically they have this monopoly on this technology,
unholy alliance.
So that's an important part of the cover up, right? Because it would be harder to and people act like, oh, the government can't keep a secret. How can they keep this secret for 80 years? Well, they really haven't, because like I said, there've been whistleblowers and people coming out forever, telling the same story for decades. And but what really it makes it harder to nail this down is if it was just kept in government, then all those stuff that is done in government technically has to be reported to Congress. They have oversight of the executive branch. So the defense contractors, they play an important role, because it's like once you put it into defense contractors, it's a whole nother set of legal standards apply. Like, so normally Congress can subpoena people in the executive branch. They can do inspections, they can do investigations and things like that. So if it was just all kept in the executive branch, it just raises the chances of Congress getting it, and it raises the chances of somebody in the executive branch who has higher authority than you getting access to it. So what they've done is they play this shell game where they give it to these defense contractors, and part of it is just just what they do with research. The government does with research in general. They give the defense contractors a bunch of money to do research for them, and then make a bunch of patents and all those things. But in this specific topic, when you give it, say something crashes and you hand it over to defense contractor, the paper trail ends. You can't really FOIA. You can't FOIA Lockheed Martin, and Congress doesn't actually have there's like a gray area about how much Congress has the right to know about the secret research that's being done in private corporations. It's not the government. Mm-hmm. So you need it would require more pressure than you normally would have to do to just do it. Say Congress, like they're doing now, it'd be easier for them to just investigate the executive branch than for them to investigate a private company. And then so when you have this thing where they're just going back and forth with the between keeping it in the Pentagon and the CIA and handing it over to defense contractors, to keep going back and forth, everybody can just throw up their hands and say, hey man, I don't know about that. Exactly. You should ask this person, So it just creates this whole
it's like an infinite loop of people that don't know shit.
Yeah. And so the last article that I just wrote, it was about and again, people keep asking me for evidence. The evidence is there, you're just not looking. So there was a newsletter that was sent from a lobbyist at one of the top corporate law firms in the world. I think they ranked like 27 in the United States and like 34 international. They represent all types of powerful corporations in all different industries. But this specific lobbyist, her name is Stephanie Barna. She was a high-ranking lawyer in the Army, like the prosecutor's office, and then she was working in the general counsel for the Army and things like that too, in high-level positions. She was actually part of the team that was investigating the WikiLeaks leak from Iraq and Afghanistan, the Iraq-Afghanistan war logs, Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, which Julian Assange, they tortured the shit out of Chelsea Manning for it, and they're torturing Julian Assange currently about it. So she was part of the team that investigated it in the Army. And then after she left the Army, she went to the Senate. She was a staffer in the Senate. She was a general counsel for the Senate Armed Services Committee. Now, the Armed Services Committee they're the ones who draft the NDAA, the defense funding bill. So as the lawyer for the committee, it was technically her job to like write it up and finalize it and things like that. So she had incredible sway on that piece of legislation. So now she's a lobbyist. She left maybe like in 2020 or something like that. Now she's a lobbyist working at Covington and Burling. And she put out this newsletter in January of this year where she was basically warning her clients. So that they have this, most law firms, they have this, like, they have their own newsletter, right? Some people use it for different things, right? But at Covington and Burling, they if you look at the section where they had it and throughout their newsletter, what they do is they give updates that are kind of relevant to the industry that their clients are in. So like changes in regulations, deadlines for reportings and things like that. So usually it's always like critical things that are related to the industry. So she put out this newsletter basically warning the clients about the Chuck Schumer legislation. And so she was taking offense for her clients about the fact that the legislation would require defense contractors to hand over any UFO materials and research that they have to the government. And the specific quote, so there's no misinterpreting. She's not talking about like their own shit. The specific, she quoted the legislation about the part that they took offense to was that any like defense contractors would hand over any craft or technology from unknown origins or any bodies of a non-human intelligence that they have in their possession. It was very literal and it was very explicit.
Yeah, very specific.
Yeah. So she was saying that this would affect defense contractors who've been doing UFO research for the government, and she was basically telling them, "Hey, if this is you, if you're in this category, you should approach the government and ask for." So in the law, there was this, the way that the law was written, everything that I forget what it is, but the national, like the Congress's like archive, the National Archive, every single agency and the entire Pentagon, they're supposed to hand over all of and defense contractors, they're supposed to hand over all of the UFO research and things that they have, all the records to the National Archives by a specific date. And then all of the data, so anything that's older than 25 years, like the default assumption is it needs to be declassified, like automatically. And then the anything that's under like, so it's more recent than 25. So basically anything that's from 2000 to now it would have to be and any other, like, so like I mentioned, all the stuff from like the 60 years before 2000. The only way that it wouldn't be automatically declassified is if the president, there's supposed to be this panel put together under the legislation. The only way that there would be an exemption is if the president, like, you can't just have a blanket exemption, like, oh, we're not going to release any of these. He'd have to go and say this specific document can't be released. He'd have to make an appeal to the panel, says this specific document can't be released for national security reasons. I personally think it's bullshit. I didn't write the law, but there was a specific exemption in there for the president. So what Stephanie Barna suggested in the newsletter was saying, hey, you should approach the government and ask them for your own, because they technically wouldn't even have the ability to redact anything, the defense contractors. They just have to hand over everything to the government. So they were saying, oh, you should have them change the law so that you can get to make your own redactions, and like, you decide what you get to release and what you get to keep. So again, if there's nothing to this is all a psyop. Why are defense contractors and the lobbyists so concerned that they're fighting Congress on legislation that would force them to hand over their UFO materials and the UFO research?
Exactly.
So that was the most recent article that I wrote, and it does get to the, like, and I get into like some of the instances, like, so we're talking about Wright-Patterson and Roswell, right? So one of the they gave some materials from the crash to Battelle Memorial Institute, which is like a defense contractor, and they had them do, and it was like 2 years after the crash, they had them do research on it. I forget the exact name of it. It's in the article, but the allegation is they reverse engineered it and discovered like this new mix of metals. It was like titanium and nickel, and it had like these weird properties. It was, so like, if you bend it and like take it out of its shape, if you like apply extreme heat to it, it would or temperature change, it would like automatically go back to its original form. And this is something that people who seen the crash materials from Roswell, they've also said that's kind of what happened. You pick it up, you couldn't bend it, and it would just go back to its original shape. So they made this discovery from basically the materials that they were given from the Wright-Patterson Air Base.
So are you trying to say that essentially they're in a way like slow dripping the technology to the military and to the public almost?
Yeah. So like, and part of it was, and it's not just like my conjecture. So this organization is like a citizens UFO research group called MUFON. Back in 1992,
yep.
They had an informant. I think his name was EJ Center, and he was basically saying, yeah, they Wright-Patterson Air Base, they gave Battelle this material from the crash from Roswell, and we did research on it. He said he was on the research team. This was in 1992, and they published it. Then the report, first of all, the report was still top secret, was still classified until like 2007 or something like that. And then when the report finally came out, one of the scientists working on the report was EJ Center. So there's no way that MUFON would have been able to just come up, like concoct this whole story about this research being done from the Roswell materials, because none of that was made public until 2007. But again, it was published in 1992. With their informant EJ Center. So what I'm trying to get at is, and I don't know to like how much technology they've been able to create from this. There's different opinions, and there's different people, witnesses and whistleblowers, who make different claims about how successful they've been in reverse engineering the technology. But if so, what we know about the technology is from what is observable, is it is capable of moving at speeds that are incredible. If we had anything that could do that, now it would be a huge change to the transportation industry. But also, they're running on basically free renewable energy. So from what's available already, that's what can be observed from these UFOs, these objects, this technology. So if this is all true and they have access to all these things, the fact that it's being kept within private industry and like the CIA and the Pentagon
in the hands of the capitalists.
Yeah, they're keeping it from the public to basically maintain control, like this, the institutions as they are right now. So again, there's so many parts of this that are relevant to people in our space. You're concerned about climate change. You're concerned about poverty.
Yeah. Both left and right. Honestly, left and right.
You're concerned about those things. Okay, well, and it's so funny to me, right? Because when I started my show, part of it was like, I've learned so much about what's actually going on. I feel like I need to let people know, and the more people know, the better chance there is that something's going to change. And part of it also was, and this is a little bit more morbid, and this is definitely something that I've has become, especially after the whole like Bernie Sanders burnout and all the progressive sellers and shit like that, where it became like all of those things that we were working towards, it became further removed. Another part of like why it was important for me to do my show is because I was like, all right, say we don't change it, there needs to at least be a record of what's happening right now, and so that people know, at least so that they can see what's happening, so that, like, to get rid of the illusion of the world that we live in, at least have, because you know how it is with the censorship, they can literally erase. First of all, you're not going to find it in like on any mainstream news sources, like what's going on with the national security state and the corruption in government. You're not going to find that in any mainstream news sources. So I was like, all right, at least let me do my part. If this whole shit is going to burn anyway, at least let me do my part and document it, so I can go back, even if it's just for myself. I can go back and like understand what has happened. But that's like the more morbid, like, objective of my show, to at least chronicle the world burning. But like I said, when I started it, it was, I feel like I can, like, something like this can't, like, this state is untenable, and something has to change, and the more people who know about it, the better chance it's going to change. And that I very strongly believe that. So now it's so funny because we're talking with this topic, with the technology. It has first of all, the topic in general has the ability to completely upend the national security state and just institutions, the current power structures in the world right now. So that alone is incredibly interesting, especially when we're seeing how.
That's your motivation right there for why they would cover it up.
Exactly. We're seeing how, and there was and I can get into this a little bit later. But there's somebody, a very high-ranking CIA official. I think he's like the third in charge at the CIA at one point, and then he resigned, and then he just blasted the CIA, and he basically said it shouldn't exist the way it is. It's a criminal organization and all this stuff. But that was one of the points that he was making, that why they want to keep this UFO secret because it undermines the institutions as they are right now. But then on top of that, so like I said, you're concerned about climate change. You're concerned about the wars for oil and natural resources. You're concerned about the pollution and the poverty. Well, right now, there's a story where if this is true and this technology exists, all those things end. And you can't even bring yourself to be even a little curious and to see if what's going on here. That is mind blowing to me. It is mind blowing to me.
Hang, I'm having like a little Wi-Fi trouble here. Hang on 1 second. I heard your the part about you know, like you're not even the least bit curious. If you,
Yeah. So that's basically how I feel about it. And so, and on the point about like challenging the national security state, it's funny because one of the things that I've noticed in my research is some of the people who have made a career out of going against the national security state, the deep state, the war machine. One thing that they've come to the same conclusion, that these UFOs are real and that the national security state is covering it up. Mike Gravel, everybody loves Mike Gravel, right? When he was on stage, at the debate stage, and ripping the imperialists and the war machine and all that shit, right? Everybody loved Mike Gravel. Well, he was part of the citizens hearing for UFO disclosure. 7 days, former representatives and like congressional representatives and Mike Gravel, they basically held like this hearing, and they brought in dozens of researchers and witnesses from who've been studying this and had direct experience with the UFOs, and people who've had direct experience with who brushed up against the cover-up. Well, Mike Gravel was on he was like part of it was basically like a committee hearing in Congress, but it was all retired representatives. And he was there, he participated in it, and at the end of it, he was convinced that there is a cover-up and these UFOs are real. So you have Mike Gravel, you have Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan he's been very influential on this topic. Danny Sheehan was a lawyer from the Pentagon Papers case.
Okay.
So he was the one who went to court when they were trying to keep the New York Times from publishing the Pentagon Papers. And he made the argument that they don't have the right to. So that's just one of the instances where he went toe-to-toe with the national security state. Honestly, he's one of the most successful civil liberties attorneys that there is in the country. So he was part of the Pentagon's paper case. He led the RICO charge for the Iran-Contra scandal, where they were selling drugs and smuggling weapons into Nicaragua. And then there was a whole Iran-Contra scandal and all the hearings and stuff like that. Danny Sheehan was part of the legal case that made it happen. There was the Karen Silkwood case. A whistleblower was talking about how there was the government and was selling nuclear material to Israel so that they could make nuclear weapons. It was a whole scandal. She ended up being killed for it, and then he proved that the government killed it. So he has been a thorn in the side of the national security state. He has exposed their bullshit more than anybody else. And for the last almost 50 years now, he's been the top lawyer on this UFO issue. So so there was a time where I think John Mack, he was a Harvard professor, right? So at the time, the government, of course, the cover-up still in full swing. And there were plenty of high-level government officials and pilots who kept talking about they had these sightings and they seen these UFOs. Some of them have close experiences. Some of them were even talking about they were being abducted. And in the leadership in the military, they're like, okay, if you want to file a report on this, you have to get a psychological evaluation. And it was basically their way of trying to like destroy their career, make it look like you're crazy and you had to get a psychological evaluation. So they sent them all to this one psychologist, John Mack. And then he was doing his evaluations, and then he, at some point, he was like, all right, all these people, first of all, they're not crazy. Like he was testing them that they have other like mental illness and things like that, if they're like just whack jobs and shit like that. He says none of them are coming off as crazy. They're all credible people, and they're all telling a very consistent story. So he started looking more into it. And then he did I think he wrote a book, and he was doing like some official like a publishing his official paper in like for Harvard about it. And then they tried to fire him. So he hired Danny Sheehan to represent him. Danny Sheehan did. They were like, okay, so you want to fire him? What's the reason for firing him? Because he's doing researching a topic that you don't like. And they were like, oh yeah, this is fake, and he's going to make the university look bad. So Danny Sheehan, he was like, okay, let me prove to you. He was going to have like basically like a hearing for his job within like the Harvard leadership, and he was going to put on a show. He was going to bring in all the investigators. He's going to bring in all the people who've had sightings, credible people with credible sightings. He was going to bring in all the whistleblowers that were available at the time. And when he went to them, he was like, all right, so let's do it. If you want to fire him, let's make it public, and I'm going to prove that this is real. The story is real. They dropped the thing, and they let him keep his job. Then Danny Sheehan, when Jimmy Carter became president, he had a sighting when he was governor, a very close sighting. When he became president, he went to George Bush, who was the CIA director at the time. He said, give me all the UFO files. George Bush said, no, I'm not giving you the files. So Jimmy Carter, he actually went to Congress and had them do like a research investigation into the UFO, what's happening now, into like what the executive branch knows about the UFO topic. Then Danny Sheehan was picked to be the special counsel for that investigation. And during that time, he got access to the Project Blue Book files. So that was one of the investigations that they did to basically the military's been doing these investigations to try to disprove like UFOs and try to like
make it go away, essentially.
Make it go away, yeah. But while they're doing it, they're collecting all these information on sightings from all these credible people, and then they end up having like a whole database of credible reports, and then the conclusion is just like, yeah, I don't think there's anything here. So it's just, they completely ignore the evidence, and then they just make up their own conclusion like there's nothing to see here. So when he was special counsel for that investigation, he requested access to the classified files from Project Blue Book. He got them. And he's like this. He's sworn like a legal there's like, so I don't know how familiar you are with the like Arrow right now, the all domain anomalous resolution office or something like that. They're basically trying to do like a new Project Blue Book and dismiss this whole thing.
Okay.
So there's nothing to see here. So he has he's one of the many people who went to them and said, he told them this story, and he swore like under oath that this is true, and that this is like true testimony. He'll testify in court, and he'll testify in Congress. So when he was special counsel for the Jimmy Carter investigation, he got access to the Project Blue Book files, and he saw pictures of a actual crash retrieval being done by the military. And so, like I said, Danny Sheehan, so he's been involved in this for almost 50 years now. He was actually he helped write the legislation that Chuck Schumer introduced. So it's so funny to me that people who want to do no research into this are making definitive statements about, oh, this is all a psyop, and you're just gullible fools for even thinking there's anything to look into here. Well, first of all, like we talked about all in the beginning of this, there's a bunch of actual evidence you can look at, evidence that you would normally would be just fine to use as source material in any other story. So all that stuff exists. And then you have all these other people who aren't fools, who aren't easily tricked by the national security state. In fact, they've made an entire career of exposing the lies of the national security state. They're also the people who are very convinced and working very hard for UFO disclosure. So I would love for all of the people in new media who can in the left and in the anti-imperialist space who think this is just one big psyop to square that circle. So you mean to tell me Danny Sheehan, with all the whole legal career that I just read off to you, this person who definitely, if he could be compromised by the national security state into telling lies and deceiving the public, they definitely would have done this shit a long time ago with the Pentagon Papers and all the other the cases he's been involved in. So you mean to tell me, and it's not like, oh, this is some appeal to authority. He says it, so it has to be true. But again, it's like somebody who, in their field, in their expertise, they're providing this professional analysis of the situation. And normally, you would take him as a credible source, especially on anything with the national security state. So why is it that you're so convinced that it's all bullshit just because it's a topic that you might not know about and haven't done any research in? It's so funny to me. It's so funny to me.
Yeah, but like, and that, I think that will be forever the, like, you know, I guess until a fucking UFO flies onto the White House lawn and, you know, Trump goes and shakes hands, because I think, you know, that's gonna be, I think that would just be perfect, by the way. That would just be perfect. Like, if Trump is president when the aliens finally come, it's like, welcome to the White House, little green man. Like, that would just, that shit would be so hilarious. Like, please, like,
really give me simulation cloud world shit.
Like, please. Now, I'd like, just real quick, because I kind of want to, before we close out, I want to get into like, just like kicking in the full door on the whole alien thing, because like I'm ready to go with it. Before we get into that, though, I do want to give one, like, I'm not going to play devil's advocate, because I'm not saying I think the overall thing what they're proposing is bullshit, but I'm just like, again, you're making a definitive statement without doing research. There's some people saying that essentially, like, and not too many, it's like, you know, people here and there, but like, what is your take on people that would say, like, well, what if this is like some Project Bluebeam shit, where it's like people are seeing like the government's making projections of these UFOs, and it's kind of like this is the lead up to them doing like whatever big thing. Like, some people have said like they're going to try and do like a rapture event where they alien invasion shit, the whole project. What's your take on people that say that? I personally, I'm like, I don't see validity in it. I think it's just more people not doing research into the topic. But what's your take on that?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question. So there's two things, and I'm going to bring up something that's kind of related. But let me talk about the Bluebeam thing. First of all right, now. So this is what I was talking about. Double standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before, you can't trust. For now, there's this completely new standard. You can't trust any government documents. You can't trust any statements from any government officials on this topic, because they're all lying. But people who want to cite Project Bluebeam, first of all, it was one document from decades ago, and it was just like you know how they make war game scenarios of shit that isn't ever going to really happen, and they're just doing it just like these outlandish scenarios. That was kind of what Project Bluebeam was. And specifically, what Project Bluebeam was to create holographic like pictures or visuals of religious figures, to make it seem like you're saying, oh, this is like a huge religious event, like it's the rapture or it's Armageddon or whatever it is, so that they can use religion to manipulate people. And then people have just extrapolated it and to complete fucking absurdity, and have said this whole thing, all of the UFO sightings going back to the 1940s, all of the whistleblowers going back to the 1940s, all of that was just part of this whole Project Bluebeam scheme, and they're like projecting the UFOs. That was, first of all, that wasn't what Project Bluebeam was, and again, that doesn't refute all of this other shit that's been going on. So it's one document, and if you want to act like that one document overrides all of this other shit, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And then, similar to that, right? The PSYOP claim. There was Richard Doty, who was an intelligence official. There was a UFO researcher. He was sent to infiltrate UFO research groups, and because they were like monitoring military bases and things like that, and they wanted to get people, like, mislead them so that they're not looking at like when they're testing like the B-2 bomber or whatever the fuck, like these military actual secret military projects. Mm-hmm. So Richard Doty was is something that they normally cite with the Project Bluebeam thing, as so this is all this bullshit, and they say, oh well, Richard Doty, he psyoped this one UFO researcher so bad that he ended up committing suicide, and that is true, and he is a piece of shit for that. But again, that was a very specific. That was like a narrow instance, and that doesn't to act like Richard Doty and the 3, 4, however many agents that he was working with are capable of so it's easy to trick one person. Like you said, he was trying to psyop the shit out of that one person, and he did, and he ended up committing suicide. It's much harder and it would be exposed at some point if they were just fabricating documents and researches and reports and investigations going back to the 40s, putting them in all these different government archives, and manufacturing all these sightings around the world and all these whistleblowers. And to what end? To what end? At least with the Richard Doty thing, there was a very specific thing about a specific base where they were testing actual equipment, and they just wanted to mislead people so that they weren't looking at that base anymore. That's a very specific thing, and the government does use psyops on people, but that doesn't mean that the topic that they're talking about in general is completely made up. Like, there's this one CIA document where it might be connected to Richard Doty, where they were like, use stories of UFOs and sextuplets and other just random news stories to like distract people about like a specific war or whatever that was going on. Okay, so like Caitlin Johnson cited that to me. Okay, so you mean to tell me sextuplets aren't real? Like they've never been stories about a woman like giving birth to 6 babies? Because that's definitely true. I've seen it. So like they will manipulate the truth for their ends. So if you're gonna tell people, see, like you said, you want to keep this specific project secret and you want to talk about UFOs, okay, you'll mislead them. You'll put out some misinformation about UFOs. That's one thing. But to this extent, with all of the information, all of the evidence, and this isn't even all of the evidence that I've found, but just what I've been able to repeat in this interview, you mean to tell me they fabricated all of that? Project Twinkle, Project Grudge, the dozens of pages of the minutes of the meeting with Dr. Teller and the military commanders who were saying that they were seeing multiple UFOs, and there were multiple UFO readings, like incredibly detailed official documents. It's one thing, and all in government archives and things like that you have to get from FOIA requests, that they weren't just handing out to people like Richard Doty was just going around to UFO meetings handing out bullshit. No, like they're actually fighting to keep some of these things secret. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't. So, like I said, if you want to, because I get the there's a lot of gray area with this topic, and it's very easy to be. And there is disinformation campaigns on this. They do try to put fake information out there to discredit people. That is true, but so when you go, so for me, it's less. I try to go less by just the stories that I hear from people and more the source material. You can't fabricate air traffic controller picking up a UFO and then a military base picking up a UFO at the same exact time while there's like 5 witnesses on the ground, credible witnesses on the ground, who at the same exact time seeing the same exact thing and it's picked up on different radar towers from in different parts of, like, in different states. Like, that's such a it's such a stretch to say that
it's a specific sequence of events that will be very hard for somebody to fabricate,
and it's repeated over and over hundreds of times over the 1940s. And again, to what end are they what one piece of technology have they been trying to keep secret from the 1940s that they would continue a psyop for 80 years? That makes absolutely no sense. And then, like I said, this the Kona Blue proposal. So that was just completely, it was a secret proposal, top secret proposal that was done within the Department of Homeland Security. The public was not supposed to see that. So you mean to tell me it was a psyop that they planted back in 2013 to drag out in 2024 to distract us from the Ukraine war and the genocide in Gaza? Like, that, none of that just makes any sense.
It doesn't.
None of that makes any sense. So yeah, I think it's important to be aware of the possibilities that for disinformation, but there's that possibility with any story with the national security state. What you have to do is follow the evidence, follow the documents, follow the things that are just too hard to just manufacture. And another point I want to make is on the psyops. We've seen the government do some psyops and they're not convincing. Were you convinced by Russiagate? Were you convinced by when they were trying to swear up and down they had nothing to do with the origins of COVID? No, that was a psyop and nobody was convinced by that shit. So we see in real time what it looks like.
Oh, they use like a little small fishing boat to take out the Nord Stream pipeline.
yeah. Like, nobody believes that shit. Nobody believes that shit. And they're not good at it. So to think that they would be so, on this one topic, their psyop abilities are so up to par.
I have a theory about that. I think they don't care to be good at it no more. I think at this point they're like, we're going to make this shit so obvious because I think they're basically trying to say, what the fuck y'all gonna do about it? Even if we is lying, what y'all gonna do about it? I think that's essentially what they're saying. Like, like y'all, y'all my whole thing on my channel was, I would like for things to change. I'm kind of where you at. I would like for things to change, but I'm just gonna kind of talk shit about the world as it's burning. Because I'm gonna keep it a bean. I think most of the world too pussy to do anything to change anything anyway. Honestly. Especially here in the West, we too comfortable. We got iPhones, Netflix, we got all this shit. Like, bro, motherfuckers just not ready for the type of shit. Like people keep talking about peaceful transitions of power. I'm like, yo, they blew they blew a white president's head off on public television because he threatened their power a little bit. And you think you're gonna win some shit peacefully? Go ahead. All right, man. Y'all got it, bro.
Yeah. So I hear you on that. So, and that's part of like why this UFO topic is interesting to me, right? Because we've seen them do all types of shit that would should have sparked outrage in the public enough to force some kind of change, like the genocide in Gaza, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen. All of these horrific things that should shock people's conscience enough to, like, we can't allow this. And all of this shit is just the COVID thing. That shit is just wild. I mean, it's just water off a duck's back. Like it's one after the next, after the next, after the next. So with this topic, I feel like because it really gets to like the core of the secrecy in the national security state and its legitimacy. Because if people find out that they've been keeping this secret for, or they've been trying to manipulate the public to look away from this and try to hide this for 80 years and all the implications that we talked about, if this is real and this technology is real, and it comes out, I don't know if this isn't enough to shock the conscience of people. And
just, bro, I'm telling you right now, we live in a world where, like, let's say my vision of how this is going to happen, you know, White House lawn, Trump shaking hands, whatever. People would, all right, what fucking Masked Singer next episode? Oh my God, is Jeremy Renner revealed? Bro, I'm telling you, dog. I'm fucking telling you right now, bro. If the American people can sit here, you know, what's in heads get blown off in Gaza and not give a fuck, I don't see them giving, like, I really don't. I can't see it.
You could be right, but I think this is definitely it would be, because like I said, they've been lying and they've been doing cover-ups. Allegedly, there've been people murdered about this. They've been
they've whacked people.
Character assassination, all those things. If it all comes out, and it just undermines the legitimacy of the government, and then on top of that, and this is something that, like I mentioned before. So this guy, his name was Victor Marchetti. He was like the number 3 person at the CIA. He resigned, and then he wrote a book talking about, I think it was called The Cult of Intelligence, and he blasted the CIA and their covert operations and the massacres in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, and basically how they just overthrow governments for corporations and things like that. He was blasting them, and then at one point he wrote an article about the UFO cover-up, and he says that, and it definitely kind of like touched on something that I was already feeling, but put it into words better than I think I was able to at the time, where he says it's the secret. There's a lot of reasons why they want to keep it secret, like I mentioned before about how it would disrupt industry, but also if people stop for a moment, and because people are always, and he mentions this in the article, people are always so busy with their lives and paying their bills and making sure the kids can go to college or keeping the lights on and things like that. People are so occupied by those things that they don't really ever question the structure and the institutions that we just have grandfathered into the system. If you introduce this into the public, if people are just going to start asking questions that the establishment do not want you to ask. So if you're telling me because people have the idea that, oh, there's all these billions of stars, so there must be life out there somewhere. But if you tell me that we know it exists and they're coming here and they're this super advanced species and they have this technology and things like that, people are going to ask questions. Okay, so like, what are they doing that we're not doing? And they're going to ask, hey, do you think all the way in their planet where they come from, it's some capitalist hellhole where everybody's working, all their waking hours are just spent to make somebody else money, and they live and they die like that? Is that really how people who are like 1 billion years more advanced than us, you think that that's how they've structured their society? And to have the secret come out would really undermine a lot of the institutions that they, and the structures, that the capitalist structure that they have in place, that everybody just accepts as
like just the peak of communications tech. Broadcast aging actors, you know, playing in shows and I mean, look, that's how we, you know, tell our stories and everything like that. I mean, you know, I'm a filmmaker. You know, sometimes I take a step back and think, like, you know, is this like a rational thing, you know, to be doing with this technology? And it's like, that's where I get into, and I honestly, and I guess this would be a perfect segue into like the last topic or question I had. Like when I look back and I see how our ancestors, like, which what I think, I am a huge proponent of the ancient astronaut theory. I'll just put it out there. I don't think this is relatively, these beings are relatively new and visiting us. I think our ancestors saw some shit back in their day, especially when you're talking about like the Sumerians and the Akkadians, when they're writing about, like Enlil and the Anunnaki. And then when you see this like fascination our ancestors had with like building underground structures, like there's this structure in Turkey that's called I think it's called Derinkuyu or something like that, and it goes like miles and miles and miles. It's like a whole underground city basically. And the current archaeological story is that, oh, these were Christians, early Christians or some shit like that, hiding from persecution or some shit like that. But now, that archaeological evidence, that isn't starting to make sense. And then when you hear stories about people from that region talking about like, Vimana and all these things, the gods battling in the sky and shit like that. Well, if you're seeing shit flying around in the sky, shooting each other, crashing into the ground, shooting shit into the ground, fuck So yeah, like I guess that'll be my last question to you, man. Do you think it's little green men? Do you think like what do you think is going on, man? Like, like I believe it's alien. What do you think their like goal is? Because also, and a lot of the things we hear about is, you see an uptick in sightings when nuclear, use of nuclear weapons or testing of nuclear weapons becomes like, a more realistic thing as well. So like, just answer that as you would like, man.
All right. So from what I've done, like from the research that I've done, I do think that there's evidence going back hundreds of years of sightings that people, I guess at the time they didn't have the language to describe. So they have these stories that seem to us like they're just completely made up, but might have some validity to them, especially when we, as like the years have gone by, recently we have more of an understanding of flying objects. We can record them. We know how they're operate. Well, you can see that they're operating in these extreme ways. So it's possible that, because they're if you talk to indigenous people all around the world, they have in their cultures, they have stories of beings interacting with their civilization at the time. There are drawings of things that aren't human, and like people default that it's just like a made up story. But again, maybe it's just they didn't have like the language to accurately describe it, so they make all of these stories and talk about gods and things like that. So I think there's a lot of evidence to that. Something that I haven't published an article about yet, but I've been doing a lot of research into, has been, you remember last year with the mummies, the bodies that were brought out in the Mexican like UFO, I don't want to say it was like a hearing or whatever.
Oh yes, it was like they were saying they were the bodies of like aliens or some shit like that.
Yeah, so there's been dozens at this point of doctors and professionals from different areas of expertise who've looked at them, and they said that these are real. Right now, there was like the top medical examiner in Colorado and some other professionals. They went to look at the bodies in Peru, and they still need to do more tests. But from what they've said, these appear to be real things, real living things. They're not like they weren't just put together, like some people were saying. So there's a whole other rabbit hole to go down that way. But like I said, with that and the stories from indigenous people, all of the mysteries with like Egypt and like Egyptian civilization and the pyramids and things like that, it definitely, I have the opinion that like there's evidence, at least there's evidence that some beings were interacting with people, and from way back then. So I think, I don't know exactly what it is that they're doing here, but they have some interest here. And there's different opinions from different people. And there's also claims that there's not just one species, there's multiple different species. So they might have their own different agendas and reasons for why they would be here. But like you said, this is like the more speculation part. But I do think, and like you said, with the nuclear weapons, I've written an article about how because you remember that meeting I was talking about, Edward Teller and all those other military officials, they were working at nuclear facilities. So these are like the most secure, supposed to be secured places in the entire country. And they have these UFOs flying all over the place and being recorded. There was an incident at the Malmstrom Air Force Base where multiple people reported seeing UFOs, and at the same time they were seeing the UFOs, they literally deactivated all of the nuclear missiles at the base, which the captain who was in charge of launching the missiles, if there was he was given the order, he said it was literally impossible for them to just shut off all of them, 10 of them at the same time, because they're on separate like power sources to prevent something like that. Specifically to prevent something like that. And people report seeing UFOs. They were shown up on radar, and they went offline. All of them, 10 of them. They had Boeing, who was the manufacturer, come in and do an investigation. They couldn't find any reason why they would all shut off at the same time. So are some of them like trying to prevent some sort of nuclear exchange? I think that's possible. They want to protect life on this planet. That seems reasonable. So, and also there's again the speculation, like the nuclear weapons that we detonate, it affects them in some way, like in their technology in some way. So they just don't like it. For that reason too. So there's any number of reasons why they could be here, and there's increasingly been credible people making the claim that there are some agreement between like our governments and these aliens, whatever you want to call them.
I've heard that before too.
Yeah, so
because my thing is, who do these like? Because I'm not gonna lie, one of the reasons why I stopped doing my channel is because I started to have these thoughts like, all right, like on my channel, I would do like a lot of like debunking of like, the anti-China propaganda and, the United States just hate these countries because of X, Y, and Z. But then when you start seeing stories about how, they're collaborating with each other on these back channels and this, that, and the third. And, we know our government here, our president is basically just a fucking figurehead. We have I feel like odd word, but we know it's a deep state that we have here in the United States. So it's like, like who's really running the game here? When we talk, like I hear a lot of people talk about the world, economic forum, all of these, power centers that we talk about, but it's like what really is, like, where does the buck stop? You feel me? Where does the buck really stop? That's what I've always been curious about. And like, I've never been one to say, oh, it's lizard people running the world and this, that, and the third, but it's like, really, like, who's really in charge here? If we're interacting, or if we have an agreement with beings that have this magnitude of power, like, it's kind of like that scene from The Dark Knight where like the guy's like, no, I'm still in charge, and then Bane just puts a hand on him. He's like, do you feel in charge? Like, at what point is it that with us?
And what's funny is, because like similar to that, like doing my research, it's like and again, it made me, like, kind of like you, it made me like reevaluate what I'm doing with my show, right? Because it felt like everything we were doing, I was covering, it was just like reaction to something that they've already decided, right? So, and it's like, okay, the COVID is a big thing and it's affecting everybody. So let's talk about COVID. Let's cover it, whatever. Second, that dies down, we're on to like the Ukraine war and talking about the risk of nuclear war, and the U.S. is using Ukraine as their puppet and to antagonize Russia and things like that. And then the genocide in Palestine happens, and we're talking about that. So it's like we're always chasing whatever it is their agenda is, and we're just like always behind
like
them,
5-10 steps behind. Yeah.
And so with this story, I feel like this gets to a lot of the decision makers, and like you said, like this cabal, this deep state that really actually runs the world. Because the people who, if it's just described the way accurately, the way this UFO program works, it's people, incredibly influential people in industry and in government, and they're all driving this, they're making the decisions on this, like this whole, like I said, deep state that's actually making policy and manipulating things behind the scene, and they're doing it at the highest level. So with this, I feel like it's more proactive than reactive. Like how I've like been covering stuff on my show, because
like I remember back in the day, my main thing was Medicare for all. Now I look back, I'm like, Medicare for all kind of won't fucking matter when nuclear weapons start flying. Medicare for all, what? Like, what does that matter at that point? Then when it's like, well, nuclear, like it's so like, just like, it seems like we're always fucking behind these motherfuckers, bro. But for some reason, with this story and this one especially, they hate when motherfuckers talk about this story. To the like I'm like, it's almost like, oh, you don't like that, do you? You don't like when I talk about that, do you? I'm gonna keep talking about that shit, and they just get madder and madder to the point where you said they literally had people whacked over this shit, and a lot of people don't know this, like. So
yeah, so this definitely gets to like the root of the national security state, because like I said, they're protecting the interests of corporations. They're manipulating the government. There have been times where they override elected representatives for their own agenda. So if they have this much power, why are we just letting them just run the show in secret? So that's why I think it is important to really put this out there, and in a way that is harder for people to dismiss, because normally it's and honestly, before we get out here, I'm just gonna I'm gonna take some shots at new media real quick.
I'm ready, bro. Go. Let's go, bro. Let's go.
Because
I got a hip hop background. I love when people drop. Hold on. I'm gonna do the DJ Clue drops real quick. No banging from us. It's like, nah, go ahead, bro. I'm joking, bro. Go ahead.
Like the national security state, they don't want people to talk about it in the way that we're talking about the story. Like, we're just going by the facts and what is indisputable and what is really going on behind the scenes. Now, they don't mind people just showing like cell phone videos of a UFO and like the lazy coverage that you've been seeing from like our side of independent media, where it's just like you know, when the hearing happened and then everybody was just sharing that one clip of Nancy May. She's like, oh, so do we have the bodies? And he was talking about, yeah, we have non-human biologics or whatever. And then everybody just ran with that shit. And nobody did any like actual research into the substance, the things that can be like the hard things, the hard facts, like the presenting the evidence in a way where it's not just somebody saying something. It's we're following this trail of evidence, and we're definitely going to expose some secrets that they don't want to come out. Instead, it's just like all this surface level bullshit, and that's why people just and like you just throw up their hands and they say, "Oh, it's just a psyop. There's nothing to see here," and whatever. Like, that is exactly what they want. Ironically, that is exactly what they want. That is the psyop. Make this topic so untouchable that no serious people want to make this a focus for themselves. They've done such a good job of stigmatizing this topic, like they did with John Mack and all the military officials that they sent to him to try to ruin their careers with the psychological evaluation. They want to make this topic so untouchable that scientists don't want to look into it, that journalists don't want to touch it, that regular people who have experiences, they don't even want to tell anybody. So I feel like it's so ironic that the psyop is working the exact opposite way. Exactly. And it's just that they and people are so lazy in new media that they're just going along with it. And
you know, for me, like I said, I was a huge Neil deGrasse Tyson fan. I used to watch. Well, I still sometimes watch his stuff. I've been kind of watching him and Terrence Towers back and forth. That's been kind of funny. But seeing him still saying it's like, oh, it's just swamp gas. It's like, I'm like, bro, we have fucking video, bro. This is radar. This is, you know, all types of military equipment that is picking this shit up. It's not fucking swamp gas, bro. We have 4 pilots sitting here saying they saw some shit. Like, it's just like, you know, it's like they've essentially made it like flat earth shit, basically. They've made it the same as that, basically.
Yeah, they made it like flat earth, QAnon, and all that shit. Like, you lose credibility if you even look into it. And I would just say, don't fall for that. And again, I'm gonna bring up the point about the double standards, right? Let's just be logically consistent, because that's all I've ever asked this entire time. I'm not going around saying, you have to believe me. I saw a UFO and it's definitely real. You have to believe me. I've never done that. I'm using the same standard of evidence that we've all used when we're covering any of the topic. Give me the source material, give me the documents, give me the investigations, give me the reports, give me the statements from officials. Let me match it up with the facts that are available. Let me actually use what we can find, the source material we can find, to actually make a story. All I'm asking is people to be consistent, because when and this isn't to, I'm not trying to discredit Seymour Hersh's reporting. I think it's very accurate. I agree with his analysis of what happened with the Nord Stream pipeline. But what is so funny to me is all these people talking about, oh, you can't trust sources from the intelligence community. They all lie. Everything they're saying is a lie. Did you know that Seymour Hersh's entire article was based off of an anonymous source in the intelligence community? Who said I'm not going with this story? Give me some Seymour Hersh. Give me the source materials. Do you have any documents to prove that? Nobody asked that question. Nobody did that.
I believe Assange's his source for the wiki or for I think it was either Podesta or Hillary's emails. Wasn't his source like within the government as well, or was that the DNC?
So nobody's ever really
like he hasn't come out and said it, but it's been people that have like made guesstimations.
That's how he gets his information. Like Chelsea Manning was she was working in the army, so everybody now has this double standard where you can't trust any official. Everything that any government official ever says is a lie, but you can cite Seymour Hersh's story, no problem. And what other evidence do you have that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? Hey, I believe they did, but it's not. There was no extraordinary evidence like we were talking about before. What we have was we are smart enough to connect the dots of what's publicly available. You have Joe Biden and all these other government officials on the record hinting at they're going to take out the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, we're going to blow that shit up.
You have this operation that can only be done. There's a handful of organizations in the entire world who can do it. It's and the CIA is definitely one of them. And then so you have statements from government officials, and you have to use your logic to connect the dots. And then you have the Seymour Hersh article with unnamed, anonymous intelligence sources. With absolutely no documentation.
It's only four countries that could have done it. Russia's not going to do it to itself. Clearly, China's not going to do it to itself. That leaves you with whoever else.
Exactly. So people are, when it's a story that confirms what they already believe, quick to jump on it. Fuck, sources be damned. I'm going to run with it. And that's something that I've definitely noticed in independent media. And they're very lazy. I've seen it. I'm just going to say it. They're very lazy. I know how people operate. I've been in this space for enough time, and I see how they operate. They want something that's just handed to them. They want a story that confirms what they already believe, and they just want to click one link, and they want to have the documents there, and then they're going to put it on their show, and then they're going to do a segment about it, and that's it. It's true and it's proven, and that's it. That's how they run their show, and it's not just that. On just even smaller things too, like you can tell that they don't want to do research on topics. They don't want to do even preparation for their own shows. A lot of these people, they have people sending in the topics for their shows, and then they just copy it, upload it into the stream, and then they run with it. Sometimes, not sometimes, it's a regular thing. For people to, they're going to do a video, they're going to react to some sort of video or something, whatever it is. They will literally not watch the video at all, go to YouTube, pull it up in the stream, and then just watch it live, ads and all, and have no prepared commentary, no research, and no analysis of the facts that are made. Just live stream the shit, give a reaction, and that's it. That's what I'm doing for the story. So they're so lazy that they don't want to actually, this story, it's going to make you sit with yourself. And you're not going to know what's true until you get through a lot of it. And when the evidence starts to pile up, it becomes untenable to take the position that there's nothing to see here. But it's a process, and it's not easy. And I can tell you because I've been doing it for the last year. And there have been times where I'm sitting, and it's so funny, right? Because I get kind of offended personally now when people try to act like, oh, you're all just gullible and you're just you want to believe this, so you just, anytime somebody says it, a national security official says it, you just go with it. I get offended with that because me personally, I struggled so much with reporting on this topic because I did not want to seem as if I'm a fucking nut job. I did not want to seem as if I'm being manipulated and I'm misinforming my audience and I'm trying to distract my audience from actual legitimate news stories. I've wrestled with myself so much on this story for hours and hours and hours for over a year doing research on this. And then for the people to refuse to even spend one night, because I'm telling you, if you spend one night looking into this, you're gonna get into finding more and more solid, credible evidence that confirms this story. And the more you look into it, there is nothing to debunk it. So I get personally offended now when these lazy, I know how they operate, these lazy motherfuckers going to tell me that I'm just a copy and pasting what government officials say. Oh, CNN says it, so it must be true. So now you think that there's a UFO story here because it's on mainstream media. That is not how I've approached this at all. And I've done more work on this topic to make sure that my facts are straight than on any other topic I've ever covered. And I would say more than most of the other popular people have done to verify a story, any story that they've covered. So I'm willing, nobody, and me and Caitlin Johnstone had some very heated back and forth on this last year. Nobody can refute any of the evidence that I've collected and I put out. Nobody. So with this, we're just talking past each other on this topic. And there's some people, a lot of people in this space who've decided that there's nothing to see here. So they're not even going to look at it. And me, on the other hand, I've compiled all this evidence and I'm just waiting for somebody to debunk it. I'm begging for somebody to debunk it. Because this is the same thing I told Caitlin Johnstone. You had no problem. I said, why don't you debunk it? If it's such bullshit, prove this evidence, prove the reports, prove the documents, prove the radar readings and videos and prove all of that, disprove all of the official, disprove the Kona Blue proposal. I want you to debunk all of that shit for me. And she says, oh, well, it's bullshit. It's nonsense. So why am I going to waste time doing it? And it was such bullshit because her and everybody else had no problem dedicating their entire fucking career to debunking the bullshit claims of Russiagate. Every single time there was a new development in the story, they had no problem coming out and saying this is bullshit because this, and this. But nobody can do that on this topic.
Well, you gotta realize, man, and I'm not trying to shit on her. You know, I like a lot of her work, but these are a lot of the same people who couldn't, and still to this day, couldn't bring themselves to, you know, accept what was factual about COVID. I see a lot of overlap with those same people as well. That like COVID, it was like, you know, for me, I was a person, I'm like, because Franco is somebody that I was going to a lot for the COVID stuff. So like literally I was looking at what he was saying and looking at what the, you know, people that were countering him were saying. And it's like, yo, he's like curb stomping y'all with his facts. Same way how I'm looking at you and her and other people going back and forth. And it's like, look, you already, like I said, I'm already biased. So I'm already looking at her crazy. Like, you don't believe in UFOs, bro? Like, I'm already looking at you crazy. But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna sit back and hear it out. And it's like, you're not presenting any evidence. You're just saying, well, it's wrong because it's stupid. That's literally what the fuck you're saying. Yeah. Like, you sound like the people who believe in Russiagate. That's what you sound like.
And there's no amount of evidence, nothing you can show the fucking Russiagators will change their mind. It's the same thing. Like I've noticed such a parallel with this story and Russiagate and the COVID thing. It's like the facts are there's a handful of people who will actually do the research and understand the facts. And it is like pulling teeth to go against the grain. And there's just like a whole wave of people dead fucking wrong and strong. And they won't budge. They won't budge. And you brought up Franco. And I have so much respect for Franco. And he's one of those people who does try to come at things independently. And even him on this topic, he won't touch it. He won't touch it. I've sent him articles, I've asked him, hey, can you like tell me what you think about it? Like, like where am I going wrong with this? Nobody wants to touch it because they can't debunk it, but they also don't want, if they can't debunk it, then they kind of have to say there's some validity here. And nobody wants to. It's an uncomfortable position. I would say even more uncomfortable than to come out against the grain on COVID and to come out against the grain on Russiagate. It is an uncomfortable position to come out and be like, yeah, I think there's something like actually going on with this UFO topic. And there's so many people who do not want to do it. And it's so funny because there was a lot of things going on in my personal life why I had to take a hiatus from my show. And to me, it's so funny how it worked out, because when I got back into it, it was kind of this brought me back into it. Like I've never like left my show and says I'm not doing it anymore. But it was just like, okay, this is where like I feel like my input is definitely needed. And it's so funny because I was already kind of removed from it, right? So I had because I've never gotten this much pushback from my own audience on anything. So I had to, when I came at this, I had to have a level of independence and not stubbornness, but I had to be able to resist all the people that I respect trying to say that there's nothing to see. There was a lot of resistance to, and there still is. People don't watch the videos that I put out on this as much as they do any other topic. Probably the least popular topic of my audience. When I write on Substack, man, sometimes I used to be getting like 30 likes on an article, people commenting, like 10 likes or something like on an article. I can write a whole detailed source original report on UFOs, not a single like on it, not a single share. And it's you have to have the constitution in yourself to follow the facts on this topic, and everybody's opinions. And I want to stress the word opinion, because it's not like a competing point of view that's based in fact. It's literally their opinion based out of ignorance. You have to have the constitution to say, I'm following the evidence, and the evidence says there's something here. And I don't care what their opinion says. I even if I respected them on this, and this, and they've been independent minded on any other number of topics and provided all this nuance in any number of topics, and there are somebody's whose approach I respect and whose work I respect. You have to have the constitution, if you're going to cover this, to be able to say fuck all of that. If my audience is again uninformed and they want to push back, I'm not going to stop doing it because I think it's an important topic just because I'm getting pushback on it. And honestly, there's a lot of people who just don't want to do that. They don't want to go there on this.
Yeah, and like, you know, we've said it over and over again. That's the truly sad part, because like I said, I think this is, you know, the story of our generation. Like, this is like, you know, I start and just to close it out here, I start thinking about, like, you know, how new things are invented with each generation. Like, we've had these technological advancements and jumps and shit like that, and I'm like, well, where do we go from fucking here? You know, we're getting the beginnings of artificial intelligence. You know, we're getting the, you know, the beginnings of virtual reality. You know, we're getting even like looking at weaponry, like hypersonic missiles being deployed in Ukraine now is like something that's like fucking, you know, we wouldn't have thought of, you know, 5-6 years ago, whatever. But you know, all these, like, what is truly next? And the fact, when I sit here and think, wait, was all this shit just like a slow drip to us? Like, these motherfuckers kind of had an idea of where, you know, this shit. It's just like it's that same feeling of when I got into politics that, oh shit, I've been lied to my whole fucking life, that I could never let go. Is the same thing with this story. that is what infuriates me, why it's not getting talked about enough. But I'm glad that you're talking about it, man. Continue talking about it. You feel me? Like, I would like to have you on again, possibly in the future, if anything big breaking happens, because like I said, I think this story is exceptionally important, man.
I appreciate that. I respect that. And is definitely reach out to me. Let me come back on.
For sure.
And yeah, you messaged me last year, and I did just get around to it to setting up this interview, and I'm very glad that I did. And I appreciate your interest in this topic, and like you, one of those people.
Bro, I feel like we brought each other out of retirement, bro.
For real. And like
bro, the last video I did, the last video I did, and it was because a friend set up a debate. I did a debate with a bunch of you'll see on my channel. I did a debate with like literal like dudes who identify as fascist. And that was like the last thing I did, and I did it just because one of my homies was like, "Yo, I know this guy at work. He's like in the politics and everything. Like, he wants to, I think y'all would be good debating." And then when I showed up to this shit, like, the pre-debate to talk about it and everything, they was like, Bull was like, "Yeah, I identify as a literal fascist." I'm like, "Oh shit, y'all going hard out here." All right, but I mean, look, it is what it is, bro. But prior to that, I was just, like I said, I was just the mix of the UFO stuff, seeing like a lot of the people in new media that I fucked with, like I just found myself like vehemently disagreeing with these people. It just left me, and then personal things in my life as well just left me like, fuck, man. I just like, all right, man. I'm gonna tap out for a little bit here, but I'm glad I came back for this interview, man. Because like I said, like just hearing you speak about this, it makes me even more madder because like, why haven't you been like, well, with the whole breed thing going on now, but why haven't you been on Rising? Like, why haven't you been on, like, for Sagar to talk about how much he cares about this UFO shit? Why haven't you been on, all of these big, air quotes, independent media outlets to talk about this? And it's like, it's ridiculous, but I'm gonna have you here as much as I can, bro. So much love, man.
And the challenge is out there. If anybody, if you want to have me on just to have to figure out like what research is out there that I've been able to put together, or if you are so convinced that this is a psyop and I'm doing a disservice to my audience and I'm distracting them or whatever, I dare anybody to get on a live stream with me. You want to record an interview, do whatever you want to do, and let's see how it goes. Because to this point, nobody is willing to actually sit down with the evidence and go through it and actually address it. Nobody, not a single person. A bunch of sloppy, shitty ass coverage on this topic. So, I admit that people do an amazing job covering other topics. RBN and their coverage of Gaza, Bree covering the genocide on her channel and on the Hill. Caitlin Johnston, she's done some great writing on the national security state and what's happening.
It's crazy. Since Elon bought Twitter, I haven't been seeing none of her shit. I literally have to go to her page to find it.
Now she's popped up on my stream. I mean my feed. But any of those people, they do decent work on other topics. But I'm going to call everybody out on this one because they are just shitting the bed on this tremendously. So if you think I'm dead wrong, or if you think I have some point, just have a discussion with me. That's all I'm asking. And again, I'm not begging anybody to just believe me because I said so. I'm asking all the people who have made a career of debunking the national security state in their lies. If you're convinced that this is another one of their lies, debunk it. Let me stop wasting my time on this. If you're so sure this is bullshit, but convince me that this is bullshit, and convince the other, because there are some people in my audience that appreciate it like yourself. Convince us all that this is bullshit so we could go do something else. So that's out there for anybody.
All right, man. The challenge is out there. Well, go ahead and shout. Follow me to the audience, man.
Yeah, you can follow me on YouTube at Unapologetic. On Twitter, my @ is UnapologeticYT, and that's for YouTube. People think it's like whitey, like I'm white or some shit like that. No, it's like for YouTube because I made an account for my YouTube channel. It's probably there. There are links to my Substack on my Twitter and on my YouTube channel.
I'll get that and I'll post it down below in the description too.
Yeah, because I've been doing the last 2 articles I wrote. I guess you could call it definitely the last article I wrote was original reporting because I looked into that newsletter and I found some of the lobbyists that were in the corporations that were specifically hired Stephanie Barna to lobby on their behalf on the NDAA. They're directly related to top secret science and technology research programs, and they're the same people paying her to lobby on their behalf. And then she was the one who writes that newsletter basically warning them about the government trying to take their UFO research and their UFOs.
Even people, I'm sorry to cut you off, but even people like the Gray Zone hasn't reached out to you to do anything about this or anything?
Nobody.
That's fucking nuts, man. That's fucking nuts.
But hey,
that's crazy.
If you know anybody who's willing to, if they want to put this to bed and they want to just air it out and just completely debunk it for the audience, there's no better guest to have on than me. If they want to explore it, just like you have, there's again no better guest than me. So if you know anybody, let them know. Let them know.
Yeah, I'm gonna start talking about it more on Twitter to kind of bait somebody in because I said I haven't been active like amongst the indie media space as much. I mostly just been like, shit posting about other stuff on Twitter and everything. but this one, hearing you talk about it and hearing how because I remember seeing you having debates with people online, like you say, heated debates with people online about this, and it's kind of like, you were one of the people, up when you're screaming about AOC, when you're talking about Gaza, when you're talking about all these things that are, I'm not going to say that are easy to talk about, but that aren't as hard to talk about as UFOs. But when you actually challenge yourself to talk about something that is extremely like we said, it's been deemed in the same realm as flat Earth, it's like I hear nobody talking about you anymore, and that is a shame. That is
and that's something that I personally. Oh, my camera just went out. You can hear me though, right?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Me personally, it's kind of rubbed me the wrong way because it's people that I said, I respect their work and things like that. Normally, these same people will quote me and they'll cite me when I'm talking about those other topics. And with this, they just want to ignore me and they want to just act like, I don't exist anymore. So, I'm not I don't know what to say. I'm not attacking their character and saying they're bad people, but I'm just saying it's weird and I've noticed it, and that's just how I feel about it.
Word. Yeah, I feel that, man. I definitely feel that. But again, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it, bro. I really do. To the audience out there, thank you for tuning in to Tox Talk. As always, like, subscribe, and share on the channel. You can support American Autopsy on patreon.com/AmericanAutopsy. And we have a Cash App as well. That's on the ticker below, and it's going to be in the description below as well. Definitely go show love. But before you even show love to me, go show love to Unapologetic on his Substack. Everything. He's doing great work, original reporting. Go show love there. Even before you show love to me, go show love there first. And guys, thanks for tuning in. Peace.